Okay, Mr. Mayor, it's 6 o'clock and you are live on, streaming live on YouTube.
Okay, it looks like we're missing Miss Del Prado, but I know she's here, so we'll get started. She can chime in. It's Tuesday, March 9th at 6 p.m. for our regular council meeting. We'll open it up and I'll call it to order. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll of the members, please?
Councilmember Abbott,
Here.
Councilmember Del Prado.
She's here.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Here.
Where you go? Hold on.
Mayor Cordino.
I'm here.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Find your flag and we will pledge allegiance to it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Let's wait for 1 second and see if Ms. Del Prado is available. Yossi, do you know if Shannon's hooked
She's
up?
having issues, technical issues. Can I just step over to where she is to help her? Are you guys okay?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll
Okay.
put it on pause for 2 seconds till Anna and Shannon get up and running.
Thanks.
Anna's up and running.
Okay.
I think you're echoing and it's bothering you because of that squeaking. I don't know. Who is it?
I'm on mute.
That's it. Your volume's up. All right. We've done the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's wait because 1 more second until she gets up and running. Need some earphones or something. But your speakers,
Oh, this.
right. Okay, looks like we're ready to roll. All right, so let's move on to our consent agenda, which consists of the minutes and I think 6 other tabs. Does anybody have anything they want to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, it looks like we're good to go. And so, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Chair, you should just ask the clerk if any of the people who asked to speak on public comments asked to speak on any of those consent items.
Good point. Guido, anybody?
So yes, Mr. Mayor, you did have one speaker who did sign up to speak on item 3B5, but she is not on the call.
Okay. 3B5 is, that's tab 5 or
That related to the burn grant for police department training.
okay. All right. She's not here though.
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on. So is everybody in favor? You call the roll on this?
You need a motion and a second, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, that's a good point. It's only been 17 years of doing
I'll
this.
move. I'll move.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Okay, now we can do it.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Cordino.
Yes.
Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. Next item, Mr. Mayor, are ordinances. You have an ordinance on first reading, an ordinance of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to create new article entitled Fertilizer Use, providing for penalties, for providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date. This is Councilmember Abbott's item, and she does have a speaker that will be making a presentation to you.
Okay, excellent. Council member?
Hi,
Your Honor.
everybody.
Your Honor.
Good evening. It's good to see you. Miami Waterkeeper reached out to us last year to consider a fertilizer use ordinance. If you're not familiar with Miami Waterkeeper, it's one of 300 international waterkeeper organizations, and their goal is to keep their local waters swimmable, drinkable, and fishable for all. You also may be aware that fertilizers that contain nitrogen and phosphorus are harmful to our bodies of waters, canals, and stormwater systems, all of which we have here in Pinecrest and around us. Many municipalities in Florida, including some of our own neighbors, have already passed similar fertilizer use ordinances. And today I have invited Kelly Cox of Miami Waterkeeper to discuss the dangers of fertilizer excess. And I ask you all, my fellow council members, to consider the proposed fertilizer use ordinance on first reading tonight. Kelly Cox is here, and I'm going to just give you a little background about her. She's been wonderful. I've been working with her for a few months now. She joined Miami Waterkeeper in September 2016. She currently serves as the general counsel and the chief operating officer. She received her JD from School of Law and got an MPS in Marine Conservation from UM's Rosenstiel School for Marine and Atmospheric Science. At she teaches environmental law and policy to graduate students. She's written and published many articles on various topics in environmental law. And she went undergraduate to NC State, North Carolina, with a dual BS degree in natural resources and political science. So Kelly, thank you so much for being here, and the virtual floor is yours.
Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Abbott, for that wonderful introduction. And good evening, Mr. Mayor, the remainder of the council. So good to see you all. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to share my screen and give a brief presentation about this fertilizer ordinance and what it means for the village. So let me try to do this. Hopefully we don't have too many technical difficulties. Just give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. Bear with me. All right, so my name is Kelly Cox, General Counsel and COO of Miami Waterkeeper. As Councilmember Abbott stated, our mission is to ensure swimmable, drinkable, fishable water for South Florida, and we have some key approaches in how we achieve that. So we use outreach and education, scientific research and advocacy to achieve clean water, healthy marine habitats, and ensure a sea level rise ready South Florida. Today, I'm here to talk to you all about fertilizer. So whether you know it or not, fertilizer, when applied in excess, can be problematic for our waterways. Particularly nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in high concentrations can lead to an effect in the marine environment called eutrophication, which is essentially overloading of nutrients in the waterways. And these nutrients can be a really good thing for plants in our lawns. They keep them nice and green, but in excess, they can be problematic for water quality. Nutrients come from a variety of sources. Fertilizers, of course, are one source. Also, septic tank effluent, sewage leaks, and dirty stormwater runoff can all contain nutrients. And it's important to note that South Florida's waterways are really exquisitely sensitive to nutrient pollution. And when we have too many nutrients in our waters, we can create prime conditions for algae blooms and fish kills, like the one we saw this summer in North Bay. So why is this a problem in Biscayne Bay in particular? Well, in 2015, scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the federal government, chose about 10 different locations around the country that were at what we call ecological tipping points. And so this meant that these locations were at a really, really critical point in their ecological health, where if any more pollutants or any more threats were to come into the ecosystem, it could collapse. And so that's what the federal government said about Biscayne Bay. They said Biscayne Bay is one of these habitat focused areas that simply can't absorb any additional nutrient pollution. Otherwise, it runs the risk of collapsing. And so as one of the recommendations from the federal government, they said we have to start reducing the nutrient load that's getting to Biscayne Bay. And this was as early as 2015. So bear with me for a second because I'm going to get a little bit sciencey on you because everything we do at Miami Waterkeeper is based on the best available science. So this is some of the research that those scientists at NOAA and at University of Miami and FIU relied on when they were looking at, okay, how is Biscayne Bay impacted by nutrients? And one of these studies from Nicole Millette from NOAA, she looked at something called chlorophyll A. And chlorophyll A is a fancy term that is basically just a proxy indicator for algae accumulation. And this team of scientists studied the concentrations of chlorophyll A across Biscayne Bay, the Biscayne Bay, North, Central, and South Biscayne Bay. And what they found were that there were certain hot spots in nearshore areas for this chlorophyll A indicator, which suggests that there are heightened levels of algae growing in those areas. So as you can see, hot spot in North Bay, hot spot here in Central Bay, and down south as well. So couple this finding with an additional finding from Kalaiovides, a 2013 study in Biscayne Bay that looked more concretely at macroalgae growth in Biscayne Bay. And what they found was that areas of Biscayne Bay were already experiencing a macroalgae bloom in nearshore areas, something called anadiamine. And anadiamine is a type of algae. If you're a boater or a fisherman, you might have seen it sort of smothering the bay bottom. It can really replace seagrass and the functional contributions of seagrass to the marine ecosystems. And this anadiamine, this macroalgae, grows really, really well in areas where there are higher levels of nutrient pollution. So as you can see, we have heightened concentrations near the Coral Gables waterway, as well as down south near Snapper Creek. Couple this information with a further study by Miami-Dade County looking at seagrass cover in Biscayne Bay. And what we see is that in some of these same areas where that macroalgae bloom was occurring, we have precipitous declines in seagrass cover. So in the North Bay areas, seagrass has declined by 89% or more in some places, 77%, 78%, and so forth. Down south near the village of Pinecrest and Palmetto Bay, we've got the anadiamine bloom area, and we've seen a decline in seagrass cover in that area of the bay by about 85%. So a really significant decrease in seagrass in that area. Again, likely linked to that macroalgae bloom that's occurring. So thinking more about this, why does this happen? Well, if we zoom in on the northern part of Biscayne Bay, we can attribute these hotspots of chlorophyll A and these seagrass declines to high urbanization. There's also a loss of wetlands in the area and essentially just increased runoff and increased pollution inputs into these regions of the bay. And I have a graphic here. I hope it works. We'll see. But it demonstrates how dramatic the decline in seagrass cover has been. So you'll see the initial photo was from 2011 and through, I believe, 2014, 2015, this has been the decline in seagrass cover. And when we remove seagrass like this from an ecosystem, we remove the ecosystem's ability to produce oxygen. And dissolved oxygen is the available amount of oxygen for all marine species in the marine environment to live and breathe and survive. And so when we lose dissolved oxygen in the water column, we end up with fish kills. And that's exactly what we saw this past August in North Biscayne Bay. So we lost all of that seagrass cover that was so important for that oxygen cycling, and what ultimately resulted was a dead zone overnight where oxygen levels just decreased to 0% available oxygen for fish species and other marine life. So we had thousands of different fish and marine life rolling up onto the shores of Biscayne Bay virtually overnight because of the declining conditions. And to give you an idea of why this was significant, it was a very widespread event. So these were community reports of fish kill observations that we saw over the summer, and the fish kill was as far north as Biscayne Park area, Ball Harbor, and all the way down past Miami Beach into even areas of Coconut Grove and Key Biscayne. So that lack of oxygen in the water really was far-reaching for the marine environment in Biscayne Bay. And shortly after the fish kill itself happened, about a week or so after that, we started to see a slimy green algae bloom occur on the surface of Biscayne Bay in the North Bay Basin. That was likely fueled by the bacteria and the decomposing fish matter that was circulating into the water column. So how did this happen? How did we get here? And ultimately, the answer is pollution. Pollution from septic systems, from sewage leaks, from stormwater runoff, and from fertilizer. So I have another graphic here to illustrate how this all works. We have sewage leaks occurring from our industrial system. We've got stormwater that remains virtually untreated in Miami-Dade County, running off nearly directly into Biscayne Bay. We have fertilizer inputs running off from lawns and parks, and we have septic systems that are failing. And all of these sources contain nutrients. So these nutrients fuel increased algae and bacteria growth in the bay, which again consumes the available dissolved oxygen. It eats up all of that oxygen that's in the water column. Those low dissolved oxygen levels contribute to fish kill events. As the fish decompose, more bacteria and nutrients enter into the water column, thereby increasing the available amount of nutrients and bacteria for more algae blooms and algae growth. And the cycle continues. And this effect is something that scientists call a positive biological feedback loop. And so it's cyclical in nature, and matters are made worse by rising ocean temperatures and decreased circulation in the water column. But we can do something about it. And that's what I'm here today to talk about. Miami Waterkeeper has been working in collaboration with scientists and agencies for many years on this issue of nutrient pollution in Biscayne Bay. And one of the lowest hanging pieces of fruit is really a municipal fertilizer ordinance. So almost a decade ago, the state of Florida recommended that municipalities adopt fertilizer ordinances to curb nutrient pollution getting into their waterways, in their estuaries, and their coastal environments. And so what Miami Waterkeeper did was we looked at the fertilizer ordinance the state had recommended, and we tweaked it to reflect the needs of South Florida. We have a subtropical climate, we have different geography and geology down here, different year-long growing season. So we accommodated the recommended ordinance and made some further recommendations for South Florida municipalities. This is not a ban on fertilizers outright. This is rather just trying to restrict and regulate how we're applying fertilizer, where we're doing it, what time of year, and in what concentration. Ultimately, we're of the opinion that more often than not, people are using too much fertilizer. And so that means that the excess fertilizer isn't taken up by the plants and instead runs off into storm drains in nearby waterways. So what we're proposing and what Councilmember Abbott and I have been discussing has been, how can we best construct an ordinance for the village of Pinecrest in thinking about the timing, the place, the rate, and then the fertilizer mix itself. So where we've landed is that we're recommending that no fertilizer be applied within the village during the rainy summer months of May through September, when fertilizer is more likely to run off into waterways and not properly be absorbed by plants or vegetation. We also recommend a 15-foot setback from storm drains and from canals and other water bodies like Biscayne Bay, because we don't need to be applying right up into the water's edge. We'd like to have a little buffer there to prevent fertilizer from inadvertently being deposited directly into the waterway. We also recommend at least 50% slow release nitrogen in fertilizer mix. And the idea behind that recommendation is that when you have slow release nitrogen, it means that the concentration of the nutrient is going to dissipate more slowly over time. So in the event that it does make its way into a waterway, it won't have a concentrated, rapid impact on the water quality. And then finally, we recommend 0% phosphorus in fertilizer mix. And that's because our soils in South Florida are very phosphorus rich, and often our plants don't require any phosphorus at all in their fertilizing regime. So to date, we've got dozens of municipalities. I think actually at this point, we're close to 100 municipalities across the state of Florida that have enacted municipal fertilizer ordinances. And I've been working on this for some time now and comparing the different ordinances and the strengths and the weaknesses. And this is all available on our website as well. But ultimately what we found was that there's a big gaping hole in municipalities in South Florida with these types of regulations on the books. So we've been trying to work with municipal leaders to pass these types of regulations. And to date, we have 7 municipalities in South Florida who have enacted fertilizer ordinances that are protective of water quality. And we're currently working with Miami-Dade County, hopefully with the aim of implementing a county-wide fertilizer ordinance before this summer. And any good fertilizer regulation should be accompanied by an educational campaign, and that's where Miami Waterkeeper is happy to step in and provide support. We've partnered with the Village of Key Biscayne, the City of Miami, the City of Miami Beach, the City of Coral Gables, and other municipalities to launch their community education campaigns and working with homeowners associations, with commercial applicators, and with individual residents as well, so that they're aware of what the best practices are and what the new regulations require for fertilizing. We have a lot more resources, which I won't go into today, including educational lesson plans and videos and fact sheets, as well as quizzes and things like that. And of course, more technical information on our website, like scientific support memorandum and also information on enforcement. All this is available on our website, and Councilmember Abbott is very familiar with them, but we're both happy to answer questions, I'm sure, that you might have related to any of the technical or educational components of this effort. And finally, I'll just conclude by saying that Miami Waterkeeper and our hundreds of members in South Florida and our thousands of supporters encourage this village to consider passing this ordinance on first reading today. We're thrilled that you all are entertaining this idea in order to advance water quality and take a step to be leaders and protectors of our marine environment, which is so critical to our way of life in South Florida. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Kelly,
Thank you very much.
Let me just clarify something. In our ordinance, we have the restricted application period from June 1st to September 30th. I think the
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood it was June 1st to
June 1st.
September 30th, not May 1st.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so it bans nitrogen and phosphorus. You can't fertilize at all, or are there other fertilizers without nitrogen and phosphorus that they can use in the summer? Oh, just phosphorus.
So it would be a ban on all fertilizing over the summer, and we encourage people to use, natural fertilizers like mulch or something like that instead of, applying typical granular fertilizer during the summer months.
I guess we have to educate the community, because typically these things are applied by a landscaping company or something like that. How do we regulate that? I noticed the penalty is quite aggressive. If you were to do this for I think the 5th time, you got $5,000. If you do it for the 7th time, you've got $500,000 in a penalty, which is that's kind of steep. What if your landscape guy doesn't get this? Yes, Mr. Attorney.
Well, I just wanted to say that we are still looking at this, not only for Pinecrest, but for several of our cities that are all very interested in adopting this. And so we may have some recommendations between now and second reading. One of our concerns obviously is the enforceability of extremely large fines. I know that you're probably aware of the Miami Beach case that struck down the extremely large fines that they had established for vacation rental violations. And so we'll be looking at that and advising you on that between first and second reading.
Okay, great. So, I mean, I guess the question is the enforcement. The homeowner probably doesn't do a lot of this stuff themselves, and will there? How will we educate their landscape companies to not do this? It may happen without the homeowner knowing. And so that's a question that I have. I guess we should research in the second. I guess the educational campaign is good. I'm supportive of it. I think it's a great one, Katie. And so, yes, Shannon.
I'm also supportive of it. I think it's wonderful that you're undertaking this, so thank you. But I did have two questions. Number one, and it may be premature to ask, but have you seen changes in water quality in municipalities where they have enacted this model?
So here in South Florida, I believe our most recent ordinance was passed in 2018. So that we don't have longitudinal studies in the way that we're able to measure change over time quite yet, but we do have an ongoing research collaborative with FIU and other scientists along the Coral Gables waterway to see exactly how the legislation has impacted water quality. That being said, other municipalities, especially in the west coast of Florida, have had these ordinances on the book for the better part of 10 years. So they do have the data available, and it does suggest that a holistic approach, including a fertilizer ordinance, will reduce quantitatively nutrient pollution in nearshore waters.
Thank you.
Anna?
Yeah, so I had a couple of questions. Why, so one of the things that you said was that the state of Florida recommended that municipalities adopt these regulations about 10 years ago. Who exactly do you mean recommended this? What statewide body and in what context?
FDEP recommended it, and they drafted a model ordinance in collaboration with the University of Florida. However, I think that now the MS4 permits actually require implementation of some version of that ordinance. Mm-hmm. We recommend, going a little bit more stringent than what's required in the model ordinance. And so that's what's reflected in Councilmember Abbott's proposal here.
In what way is it more strict than the model?
For example, we recommend a summertime blackout period for fertilizer application, and that's not included in the model ordinance. And that's for a number of reasons that we can get into turf grass management discussions for sure, but one of the reasons is that in South Florida we do have a subtropical climate, and so we consistently have a rainy season, and that we also have a year-long growing season, which areas of like Central and North Florida don't have a year-long growing season, and so they're trying to fertilize in times of the year where it's not necessary for us. And so we're more mindful of the water quality piece of this, and so we said, okay, well, if we can avoid fertilizing during the rainy season, let's go ahead and do that, and we can fertilize in other times of the year because our growing season is year-round.
Okay, can I ask, as an organization, why is the strategy a municipal strategy as opposed to a regional or county strategy?
It is a county strategy. As I'm sure you can understand, previous county administrations have not been super amenable to undertaking these types of ordinances or regulations. With the recent change in the administration, we're seeing more appetite to do so, and more movement, particularly after the Biscayne Bay Task Force concluded. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that initiative. So that task force basically sunsetted last year and opened up all of those issues related to Biscayne Bay for legislation. So they made them ripe for county regulation, and the fertilizer was a piece of that. So, so we're going to be moving forward with the county piece. It's just been molasses slow.
Yeah, as most county things are. So when you mentioned that you were working on an ordinance with the county, and you said that you expected that to happen before summer. So do you have an ordinance? If so, who is sponsoring it? Where is that in the political process of the county commission?
Sure, it was supposed to be before the Port Miami and Environmental Resilience Committee tonight. But unfortunately, due to a clerical error, it did not make the committee agenda. So it looks like it will go before committee next month. And then the committee will make a recommendation to second reading, likely by probably May. And so there's going to be some, adjustment and probably a leniency period as to whether or not the summertime blackout period will apply for this summer. And so that's why I think these measures from the village of Pinecrest, for example, and other municipalities are important, because we can start working on the nutrient issue now while we don't have to wait for the county. In terms of sponsors, the former Commissioner Danilo Vincava was the initial sponsor of this legislation, and it's currently sponsored by Commissioner Higgins.
And then my last question is in terms of the recommended mix of slow release nitrogen, et cetera, many of our homeowners hire nationally branded companies to fertilize. Do those companies here in South Florida regularly stock fertilizers that would comply with the recommendations in our ordinance?
Yes, so they do. And I also wanted to respond to the mayor's comment in this as well. Various municipalities, depending on their size and their bandwidth, have created commercial applicator registries. So when they come in for like business tax receipts or, to do their annual business registration, they have to show that they're in compliance with the ordinance. There are some education compliant or requirements in the ordinance as well. So the city of Coral Gables has actually created a landscaper registry where only certain approved landscapers are permitted to do operations within city limits, and it allows them to better track who's applying what and when, and making sure everybody's licensed. So on the enforcement side of things, I want to be clear that we're not recommending going and targeting individual homeowners and residents with this ordinance and trying to play a game of gotcha. That's not what we're about. We would never recommend that. We're just more broadly proposing this idea of having a regulation on the books is going to be beneficial in the event that there is a bad actor. So, I don't foresee anybody violating this ordinance a dozen times and getting fined $1 million. That's not really what it's about. And I don't think this village would allow it to escalate to that point. But I do think that, and the science tells us that having a regulation on the books is powerful for changing public opinion on a matter. And there's actually peer-reviewed studies that demonstrate that with other fertilizer ordinances across the state. So it's a really powerful thing. And the way I've explained it to other municipal entities is that, we have a stop sign, for example. Not everybody's going to abide by the stop sign, and people are only going to get in trouble for running the stop sign when they get caught. But more often than not, people are going to abide by the stop sign. So that's sort of the thought process behind it.
Doug, you have anything?
I'm
sorry, Anna, were you done? I may have cut you off.
I just had one follow-up
I'm sorry.
question that occurred to me while Kelly was speaking, and this is directed at the village attorney.
Sorry.
If the county is in the process of drafting an ordinance and it passes this summer, say, after our ordinance passes, how do those two ordinances layer on top of one another, particularly if the possibility exists that the county might pass it without the summer blackout, for example?
Well, there are a couple of ways that could go. I have not read the proposed county ordinance, so I don't know exactly what the current wording is. Some county ordinances pass and have a county-wide and preemptive effect. Some county ordinances are preemptive to establish a minimum, but allow the cities to go farther. For example, with respect to the cone of silence, the county has a minimum cone of silence. You can have a tougher cone of silence, but you can't have a weaker cone of silence. So this may be that kind of situation, or it may only apply in the unincorporated areas. I haven't read it, and perhaps our guest could, maybe more familiar with it. But those are the possibilities. And of course, since it hasn't gone to first reading at the county, has it gone to first reading and then went to committee? So it hasn't gone to committee. It could get changed in committee.
So the way that it's written now is that it sets a floor and the municipalities are welcome to go more strict.
Beyond.
Got it. Thank you very much. That was my last question.
Doug?
Yeah, so I don't think people should be over fertilizing. Am I on mute? Yeah, no.
We can hear you.
We can hear you,
Yeah,
Doug.
so I don't think people being in a business, very rarely do we ever use fertilizers. I think even people here in the council can't even remember the last time they even put fertilizer on their trees. I mean, I really don't think they have. Joe, I don't think you have. Yeah, exactly. Probably don't even remember. I've only ever used time release. That's all I've ever used. I mean, back to Anna's, which she asked the attorneys, Mitch, it was so, or back to the guest, the county ordinance, did you know if it was written for, it would cover the whole county, not just unincorporated? You don't know how the ordinance was written in that way?
No, as she explained, and I just got confirmation from somebody else, the county ordinance establishes a floor, meaning that there's a county-wide ban, but
Okay,
that
so it is a
municipalities can be more restrictive than what the county establishes.
And you don't know if ours is more restrictive?
I don't.
Okay.
And we really won't know until it comes out of committee.
But why'd the county kick it back to committee?
They always do. The
they?
county's
On something like
process.
that?
The county's process with every ordinance is to have a first reading with no comments at all in front of the county commission and no discussion, and then send it to committee where it has a public hearing and has the most of the discussion and the shaping.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the full board for a second reading without public comment.
So it was the old commission that sent it to committee, not the new. So the new commission hasn't even
Right.
heard this yet.
The new committee hasn't heard it.
New committee or the new commission.
Yeah, you're right, because there are several new members on the commission.
Yeah. No, I don't have much more, Mayor. I think that very few people fertilize in Pinecrest anyway.
So all those guys with the expensive landscaping, right? So these guys that have these big houses and all this, they don't use fertilizer.
Very little. Our climate down here with the rain and the soils, we are high pH, like she said. I mean, we're so much lime here. I mean, it's not.
You don't even need it.
Yeah, and really to get acidic, you could really just keep your oak tree leaves on your property. That would make your soil more acidic.
Well, nobody does that.
So
Nobody does that.
yeah, nobody does that. They just use leaf blowers.
Can I ask one
Yes, ma'am.
annoying question? So
One.
just one? I'm on
You only get one
ninth?
annoying one a night.
Okay, this will be my 8th for the evening. So I do have concerns with the way the penalties are written, and just in terms of being so huge that they're out of alignment with general code compliance violations. So we might want to discuss that as a council, and just in terms of tweaking those levels. And then it says funds generated by penalties imposed under this section shall be used by the village for the administration enforcement of and corresponding sections of this ordinance, and to further waste conservation and non-point pollution prevention activities. So my question is, would that compel us to create a separate fund, which then requires us to hire people to drive around and check on fertilizer application, number one, which seems a little bit dystopian. Number two, it seems to me awfully pointed to require us to put $500 perhaps or $50 of rarely received funds generated from this ordinance and set it aside and not allow it to enter into our general budget. It does seem a little odd that way. Yes, Madam Manager, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, what I would suggest is that any funding that would come as a result of fines attributed to violations of this ordinance be put into the stormwater fund. And the reason for that is because any drainage facilities that we build are built to have pollution control, capabilities. We also use that funding to maintain our storm drainage system, which also obviously goes to decreasing levels of pollution in the water and in our waterways. So I think any funding that would come from that source could just easily be put and budgeted into that fund specifically, which is only used for those purposes.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say, Joe, one other thing too. And this is to our guest, I guess, and everybody that I don't think, and being in the business for a long time here, that the fertilizers are a great problem here in Pinecrest. They may be right on the bay, but to me, the bigger problem, and I'd hope that the Waterkeepers Foundation would go after more, is the insecticides. I mean, we've let people plant Ficus benjamina hedge and treat them with merit and septic, insecticides for 20 years. I mean, and massive amounts of it. And there's so many running around this county, illegal spray companies that God only knows what they're dumping in our grass and our soils and our trees and our roots and our swells and our parks. And that to me is really the bigger problem. Insecticides kill everything. They kill our insects, which kill our birds, which kill our fish, which kill our, everything. And that's what I'd really like to see you guys run and focus. Like I said, very few people have the money to fertilize. I've never fertilized a yard yet. I haven't fertilized a yard in the last 5 years. I really haven't. And I do, $10 million homes. You just don't need it here really too much. But boy, do they dump the insecticides on their lawns every week, every 2 weeks, every month. Somebody sees a little bug and they freak out. And I got to spray my whole acre lot with gallons of chemical to kill a spider. And that, to me, I wish I'd see you guys focus on that more than focusing so much attention on a fertilizer. I'm sure that the sod farms and places like that and the sugar farms and all those are really dumping tons of fertilizer, but the homeowner, like I said, I don't think anybody in this council remembers that if they didn't put a lick of fertilizer on their lawn or trees.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to the point on insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides, those are preempted by the state of Florida. So we're not allowed to regulate those.
There you go.
But I would love to. So if you guys want to pass a resolution directing the state legislature to remove that preemption, I can help with that.
We're up for that.
But I will say
Well, see, you learned something new. I guess they got us.
Well, but I will say we do have, I do have a draft resolution that I can share with you all related to the regulation of glyphosate, which is, a probable carcinogen often found in Roundup and things like that. It would be a resolution, so it would be a voluntary item that the council takes on to pass and say, in our village parks or, facilities and things, we're going to stop applying this. But it's not something we can mandate on the community.
I've never seen us use that stuff in our parks anyway, to be honest.
The city of Miami was applying it and they stopped applying. I think it was like 5,000 gallons of Roundup a year because they passed a resolution. It's pretty powerful.
We do a lot of hand weeding, actually.
Yeah, I know. We're not big Rounduppers here.
And Kelly, you and I talked about Roundup because I was concerned about it. And you did tell me, if anyone's listening, that the organic Roundup is better than the regular Roundup if someone feels like they must use it.
Hey, I can give everybody the recipe. It's a gallon of vinegar, a couple tablespoons of salt, and a little bit of vegetable oil. Mix it up in a sprayer and pick the sunniest day you can and go out there and spray your weeds, by the end of the day, it's going to be a dead weed. No, it's a weed killer. I'm telling you.
It is.
Excellent.
No.
So can we discuss penalties? Obviously, I'm supportive of this, which is why I'm picking it apart. I just wanted to make that clear. So can we discuss penalties, just because I want to be sure that they're sort of in line with what we do?
Well, Mick said he was going to get back to us about that, right?
So in
Yeah.
terms of passing, of making a motion to pass, how would we make a motion in support of this while making it clear that we have every expectation that the fourth and subsequent violation amounts may be subject to adjustment?
Mr.
We'll
Chair,
fix that.
Mr. Chair, if I may
That
suggest.
second reading, I meant.
A
Yes, sir.
motion would be in order to adopt the ordinance on first reading, subject to review and revision by the city attorney's office, by the village attorney's office.
Mhm.
Would anybody like to make that motion?
And
Maybe
with
you might
the-
as well.
Can I make the friendly amendment that we order in this motion that funds generated by penalties imposed under this section shall be used by the village of Pinecrest, shall be added to the village of Pinecrest Stormwater Fund?
Katie, is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So you made the motion?
Yep, I make the motion.
All right. Anybody want to second it? And Shannon will second it. Okay, great. Any other questions? Seeing none? Tito?
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Cordino.
Yes.
Motion carries. This ordinance will be on second reading on April the 13th.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
stuff.
Thanks, Kelly, for coming.
Thank you for having
All right.
me.
Thanks, Kelly. Good work. Tab number 9.
All right, on to ordinances on second reading. An ordinance of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, amending Chapter 15, Article 1 to amend the definition of litter, provide that animal food shall not be left unattended outside of enclosed fenced areas, and to provide for penalties, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date. This item is a public hearing, Mr. Mayor, but no one registered to speak on this item.
Okay. Anna, do you have, you want to make any further comments on this?
No, I've had a few people reach out to me in support of the idea, particularly because of peacocks. But as I keep reminding them, all sorts of animals like to eat unattended animal food. I noticed that the language has been changed in order to make it kosher, to leave food out in a covered space immediately adjacent to a dwelling, like a front porch or a carport or something similar if people are feeding a cat that way, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's something that we can do. I'll point out, I was interested to note after our meeting last month where we discussed this issue, that the city of Key West banned the feeding of chickens. The famous Key West roosters. It's become such a nuisance that they have had to outright ban the feeding of chickens. And not only that, they had to ban the feeding of chickens and pigeons because people were leaving enormous quantities of bird seed around and claiming they were feeding pigeons and not chickens, and so it was unenforceable. So now
Like that makes it better.
like that makes it better. So now it's banned in Key West to feed chickens and pigeons. So I think we are all facing these attractive nuisances for animals that become pests when they're fed. So knock yourselves out.
All right. Anybody, any other comments on this one?
I had an objection on first reading. As you know, I thought there was a slight ambiguity, but I think that that it's been cured with the amended language. So I'm good.
Okay. Anna, you want to make a motion?
I would move to pass this on second reading.
Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Katie, you got it? All right.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Cordino.
Yes.
Motion carries. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, also on second reading, is an ordinance of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, authorizing the borrowing of money and the issuance of debt in an amount not to exceed $5 million for the purposes of financing the acquisition of property and/or refinancing all or a portion of an outstanding loan previously undertaken from the Florida Municipal Loan Council by the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, dated as of March 1st, 2011, providing for an effective date.
All right, who wants this one?
This, just for the record, Mr. Mayor, this ordinance is also a public hearing, and likewise, there were no members of the public that registered to speak on it.
Okay,
Although we did get some comments that were submitted with regards to the purchase.
So it does go directly to the
That's-
resolution that's later in the agenda.
yeah, that is tab 12, right?
Correct. So this
Okay.
is related to that. In essence, this would authorize the borrowing of funds that would go to purchase and reimburse the village for the purchase of the Palermo property, should that go forward. And it also allows for refinancing of an existing debt. The timing of this all would happen sometime in July. And assuming the council moves forward and exercises its option to purchase the Palermo property. There will likely be at some point between now and July changes to this ordinance. However, the bond council suggested that we not make the change between first and second reading because it has been advertised that way. And so I will be coming back to council with more information between now and July. And it's going to be potentially going up. We're still trying to piece together funding to make up the shortfall for the Upper Garden project. If you recall, when we issued the bond for the Upper Garden project, it was issued with an allowance of $4.5 million. But when the bid prices came in, they came in higher than that. So we're trying to piece together where we can make up that shortfall for that project. And then any balance necessary would likely be folded into this, or at least I would be recommending that to council, but I'm not ready to do that yet until we've crunched a little bit more on the finances that we have available to offset some of those costs with existing funds that we might have already. So, but for now, this will allow us to be reimbursed. We would pay out of our reserves if we were to exercise the option to purchase the Palermo property. We would pay for that out of reserves and then reimburse ourselves sometime after July.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Anna.
Madam Manager, can you let us know exactly what proportion of the $5 million applies to the hypothetical Palermo, and so that we can understand what percentage goes where?
The Palermo property is the option that we exercised was for $3,750,000 is the cost of the Palermo property. We've set aside a contingency, and then the additional funding was to cover and refinance $950,000 loan that we're just refinancing. That portion of that is only for 10 years. So when we reissue this, it's not going to extend the life of the one loan that we're refinancing. It'll still be for the same period of time, but it'll be a 20-year loan ultimately.
Got it. So basically 80% of this quantity would be dedicated to the Palermo property acquisition and approximately 20% to refinancing existing bonds.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we have a motion.
I'll move.
Anybody want to second it?
I'll
Seeing none, oh, there we are. All right, Guido,
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Corradino.
yes.
Motion carries. The ordinance is adopted.
Okay, good work, everybody. Reports and recommendations. Mine, the coronavirus. I just want to no, nothing real to report, but I guess this week matches our 1-year anniversary of starting this whole thing. Remember, we had that emergency meeting on Saturday, the 14th, and I was looking back through my notes, and man, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. None of us. It was just amazing. It was just amazing. My notes say, well, in a couple of weeks, by April, we should be done all this type of thing, and we'll get back to normal. And we won't even be done it by April of 2021. So I think everybody worked their butts off on this thing, but we were at the mercy of this thing the whole way. So good job, everybody, for doing what you've done. Anyway, that's it for me on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Number 2. Yes, sir.
Can I give a quick update on the vaccines for the village, since we're on the coronavirus topic? So just want to advise council that we have yet to receive any notification of when we might be actually getting vaccine supply. But in the meantime, we have already met with 2 providers that are willing to run vaccination sites for the village. One would operate out of Pinecrest Gardens, and we're currently negotiating with a second company that might do a second vaccine site somewhere else in the village. So more to come on that. The one that we're coordinating for Pinecrest Gardens will be a drive-through, stay in your car type scenario. So as soon as we are given vaccine supply, we're ready to go. So it's just waiting on the Department of Health to get.
If you could get more providers, would you need them?
We have 2 additional labs that are willing to provide us tech support. In other words, the nursing staff, the medical staff to administer. But right now, we can't move until we know what kind of supply we're going to be getting. But we're prepared to be able to do a full-blown vaccination site with a day's notice. We just need to get the supply. Meanwhile, our law enforcement officers that are older than 50 have all been offered vaccines and have been scheduled. Were scheduled this past weekend with Jackson Health Systems and Memorial, which really helped us out with doing all of those scheduling. And so we're going to keep partnering with them as things open up and we can get more employees vaccinated.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I ask 2 quick questions about that? For the vaccination sites, is there any cost to the village for doing that?
There are costs, but based on what I've read so far on the American Rescue Plan that's going through Congress right now, it's all reimbursable through the federal government. So any cost that we might incur just in support staff, like maybe doing traffic control type work at the testing sites and that sort of thing, would be reimbursable to the village.
And is there a cost to the patient getting the vaccine?
The provider would charge insurance, and insurance would get reimbursed through the feds. So the actual vaccine is free, but the cost of administering it, the medical part of it, is still paid for and covered by the federal government. I don't know if you're speaking, but you're on mute. Oh, okay. Sorry. That was it, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to get
Okay, perfect. If there's nothing else on coronavirus, Friends of Pinecrest Gardens, Anna?
I just wanted to let everybody know that the 501c3 that we voted to create and we were working on last year now exists. It had its first board meeting. I was there representing the council. I was really thrilled to see that council member BJ Duncan from Cutler Bay was elected by the group to chair us. So we have another elected official chairing our Friends of Pinecrest Gardens. So I had to offer a quid pro quo. If Cutler Bay ever needs a chair for something, I said I would do it. It was a very nice organization. It'll be a little bit slow to get itself off of the ground because we really are creating something out of nothing. We reviewed the bylaws. We have to open a bank account. We have to figure out some very, very basic mechanisms to get the Friends of Pinecrest Gardens functioning. But the board members were all very game to give it their best shot. They were all going to reach out to Alana Perez to take a tour of the facility with her and with her staff to better understand what's there, what has been there, what could be there, to better understand the Upper Gardens project and how that might fold into the cultural and arts programming there. And we are going to meet again in May. This is a group that meets quarterly. So in May, I'll come back with another report for you. And then I just want to remind everybody that according to the bylaws that were adopted, the council member, liaison, or board member is the vice mayor, unless the vice mayor decides to appoint someone else, and that lasts for 1 year. So I'll do this through next February, and then next February, who's ever vice mayor next February will be on this board. The rest of the board members for Friends of Pinecrest Gardens have 2-year terms. So we'll be the ones cycling on and off while they're a little bit more stable. So it's going, it's happening, and it exists. So let's see what this group is able to do. I hope I have great success.
That's great.
Good work. Thank you. Yossi, you want to, your communicated counsel?
Just wanted to mention, if you had any questions, FEMA flood insurance study that was put in there just for your FYI, that's been submitted to FEMA. And now we're awaiting their determination on our community rating. Hopefully we're successful in lowering improving our community rating so that we can lower insurance costs for people that have to purchase flood insurance. And then there's in the tab, I had included the B305 challenge information. Just as a kind of an FYI, I didn't know how or if the council was interested in our taking an active role in that challenge. We officially have not done so. A lot of the things that they're suggesting be done, we already do. So I think it would be appropriate for council to just make a motion to, officially participate in the B305 challenge. And then that way we take an official stance as an organization.
Help me out. What is that?
It's an initiative that the Office of Resiliency at the county is putting together to try to implement operating efficiencies to buildings to lower cost of, operational costs for electricity costs that are, incurred. So we already do that. We've already done a lot of the stuff. So I don't know how much more we can possibly do because we've done a lot of upgrades already to our lighting systems and whatnot, but we're always looking for those types of efficiencies. When new technologies come in, we'll do and make those upgrades. And, in a lot of cases, like some of the LED lighting improvements that we already have scheduled to happen, with the new bond that we're issuing, we can get credit for all that work and report it as part of, our efforts to B305. So, it's just a good idea. It raises awareness about how you can be more efficient, and resilient through technology.
All right. Guido, you have any report tonight? Mitch, anything?
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor.
Got it.
Yeah, I just wanted to report briefly that the most recent COVID relief bill provides aid to states, counties, and cities, including our village. And according to the schedule that I saw, we will get something like $9 million. And this has much broader potential uses than the previous relief, which was intended only to really deal with your losses and costs due to COVID. This money can be used for some of the projects that we've been talking about. I think that we'll get a little bit more refinement in what we can use it for, but we're preparing a memo that will provide a more detailed guidance. Briefly, though, we will be able to get, because we're under 50,000, we'll be getting our money through the state, which obviously would be, it would be better to get it directly from the federal government, but we'll be getting the money from the state. It will be paid out in 2 tranches. And one of the stipulations is that all the money will need to be spent by 2024. I had a brief conversation with Chad, who's been reviewing the act, and it appears that money can be used for things like water projects, which is interesting. So this is all good news. This is all somewhat, I think, unexpected in terms of what we'll be able to fund, but infrastructure projects, transportation, water, things like that, all appear to be eligible expenditures. The main thing is that the money be used within the next three years, which is another issue. I don't know if that means it has to be committed or it has to actually be transferred to the recipient by that time, but we'll clarify that as we move forward. But I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar screen so you can add that to your wish lists that you're creating when we complete the strategic plan next week, that you will have some unexpected federal funding available to you.
Okay. Well, I think what we got to do is let's not get anybody's hopes up. Let's confirm what we can use it for first, and then if we can use it on a project, let's get some consensus on this group and see if we can't do it. Anybody got any comments on that? It's pretty important.
Just, I guess I'm a cynic. I don't want to get my hopes up because I'm afraid that, there'll be so many caveats with what you can use it on that we won't be able to use it. So I'm trying to keep my excitement under control. But it's better to have more options than fewer. So I guess yay. Right?
Yeah, let's let it pass. Let's not freak out right now and get everybody's going in the wrong direction and then figure out we can't do something, but we got time. Anybody else?
Right, I did mention, Mitch, if you can take a look, I also was quickly reading through it. There was some stuff there for the National Endowment for the Arts and stuff. So as Chad or staff is reviewing it, if you can also look for opportunities to, potentially tap into those funds for other projects that we might be eligible for.
Yeah, and bear in mind that we're still waiting for these Small Business Administration to announce the guidelines for the expenditure of the Shuttered Venues Relief Act, or the Save Our Stages Act, which was previously approved by the Congress, but SBA still hasn't opened the window for applications. But it does apparently apply to venues like Pinecrest Gardens that lost a great deal of revenue due to COVID. So we are continuing to monitor that as well as another source of additional funding. And we'll be there. We will have an application ready when the window opens.
Wonderful.
Great. Good news.
Good.
All right, let's move to, yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Sorry, Katie.
Can we back up? I'm just looking at this B305 thing. Yossi, did you need a motion or anything for that?
It's up to council if they want to officially participate in it so that we can be listed as a participant in the 305 challenge.
It doesn't seem to be a downside, right?
Yeah, I don't.
I'll
Let's
move.
do it.
Let's do B305. That's
I'll
my,
second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? We will B305 then.
It was 305 day the other day.
Was it? Oh, it was. That's silly. All right. Tab 12.
Yes, Pitbull, we see you.
All right. On to resolutions, Mr. Mayor. A resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, ratifying the village manager's execution of a contract for sale and purchase of the property located at 6610 Southwest 88th Street and 8850 Southwest 65th Court, and approving the purchase of the property, providing for an effective date. The Village Council did receive, and I circulated 6 emails as public comments on this item. And there is one person that's registered to speak on this item, Mr. Mayor. And,
Okay, Yossi, what you want to give us a little background and then we'll open it up to public hearing?
Sure. Council would recall that we were approached back in the fall with the possibility of purchasing this property. And over the course of 3 or 4 months, we stopped having negotiations, and then were reapproached to reopen negotiations, which resulted in council's authorizing me to make an offer. That offer is what is before you for consideration. They agreed to that offer, and subsequent to that, we had meetings obviously in January authorizing us to go forward with doing all the financing mechanisms and whatnot to move forward with this purchase. This is now your second reading. And should the council approve, or rather not second reading, but the second reading of the financing mechanism you already had. This is the official decision to either exercise or not exercise the option to go forward and purchase the property. It's a 3.76 acre property that we all commonly refer to as the Palermo property. As far as what it's going to be used for, open space, we do not know what it's going to look like. There'll be a formal process, master planning process, where we'll first go through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan process that will then identify any areas that lack level of service concerns that we might have in our Parks and Recreation, and then we can address some of those when we get into the master planning for what this facility may look like. In the interim, we would recommend that we demolish the existing structures on site. We have looked at the well that's there, and it seems to just be decorative. So we would also be recommending just taking the well off and closing that up so that there's no hole that people can fall into or anything. Other than that, there are really no concerns, environmental concerns on the property. I believe the attorney can speak to title search and everything. They've been working on that. We've done all the environmental studies, surveys, and everything looks to be in order, correct?
We believe we are ready to proceed.
Yossi, this is, can you talk a little bit about how long we've had acquisition of property on our strategic plan and maybe some of the things that we've looked at over the years?
Sure. We've council has had strategic goal for over, at this point, over 10 years that sought for the village to always be on the lookout for the possibility of acquiring land for parks and open space. We've in the past obviously made offers on other properties. On this property in particular, when the judge passed away, we made inquiries then to see if the property might be available for purchase. Unfortunately, by then, the property had already changed hands to a friend of the judge who had already been working on acquiring those properties. So it wasn't possible then. We obviously made offers on properties like the horse farm property. We've made offers on the property that was off of 67th Avenue with pine trees. So over the course of years, we've made offers, and unfortunately, those have not been fruitful. In this case, we've been lucky to in the fact that the property was put back up for sale, and we were contacted to see if we would be interested. So I think it's a great opportunity. and obviously preserves the open space in an area where we have the, higher densities because we have the multifamily district up in the west quadrant of the village.
Let's open the public hearing and hear from the public, and then we'll have a discussion. There we are. You're
on
muted.
mute.
She's still on mute.
Guido, you're
Who's
on
that?
mute and she's on
Yeah.
mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good. Let us have your name and address, and then you can go.
Sure. My name is Rana Beck and I live at 8940 Southwest 65th Court. It's the property abutting the proposed area that you guys are talking about.
Hi, Rana. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So my background is I've been in Miami for about 10 years. I was living in the Gables for the first 5 years. And then I moved to downtown Miami on the river for about 4 years. And I purchased this property in December 2019. If I had known that the plans were to turn it into a public space, I most likely would have not bought the property. My concern is basically noise and unwanted trespassers, that kind of concern for my own safety. Basically, in the past 6 months or so, I've had 2 incidents where one time I wasn't home, but there were trespassers that crossed across my gated property into my neighbor's yard, broke into my neighbor's property. I attempted to see any sort of trespassing evidence on my cameras. It didn't pick up anything, but the police, came to my property the few days later and asked me about it. And then most recently in the past week, Monday morning at 3 a.m, there was footsteps outside of my bedroom, outside of my garage. Again, my gate's always closed. And I am concerned because, I feel like I'm, on a very isolated street, which is great for me. I want peace and quiet. But I am concerned about the increase in, public entering property that is adjacent to my home. The reason I bought this house is because it's very spacious. I'm on an acre. I personally do not need access to a park. I know there's 2 parks that are very close by. I think one's at 64th and 80th, and the other one is the Coral Pine Park. I often go to Matheson as well, and I've gone to the dog park there. I've gone to, other nearby Pinecrest gardens. So I'm happy with the adequate park space in the area. I would like to comment that over the summer, there was extensive construction on 88th, which is only about, 500 feet or so from my property. The noise was definitely bothersome. And I can just imagine that would be magnified if it was in my backyard. I do work nights, I work days. I'm a physician. I work at Baptist, I work at West Kendall, I work at Mercy. When I'm home, I'm still taking calls. I also do telemedicine consults for patients over video, over, FaceTime type devices. So noise is always in the back of my head. If I'm doing a night shift, I want to have peace and quiet during the day so I can sleep. I have many concerns about the noise, and then the additional concerns with, my space being protected, our street being protected. I can tell you honestly, on the corner of 88th and US 1, there's a number of vagrants, there's a number of homeless persons asking for money every single day. And I do see them at Baptist. And I know if they can make it from 88 and US 1 to Baptist, they can definitely make it to a public space and be in a park, and who knows, drugs, whatever, vandalism, loitering, garbage dumping, that kind of stuff. So I have a list of concerns. And unfortunately, I've been living under a rock this whole time that this project has been proposed, probably because I've been working a lot. So that's why I was very surprised and upset when I found out about this yesterday. So that's just, the bare minimum of my concerns. I know my neighbors are also concerned, similar reasons as well. So I hope that, moving forward, that you consider the neighbors who are directly affected by this, consider why we purchased here and our concerns for privacy, safety, space, and peace and quiet.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing us into your concerns, and I'll let the manager explain what we're going to do in the near term and the midterm relative to programming the space. But as we go forward with programming, your concerns will be first and foremost in our minds, and we'll include you with everything that we do and make sure that we've addressed as many of those as possible. And I'm hoping that what we have is a much more secure, much more safe environment, not only immediately after the purchase, but going forward to whatever this ultimately becomes, which we don't know yet. Yossi, what would we be doing immediately?
So immediately, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking about just doing away and demolishing the structures that are there, could potentially be causing an attractive nuisance. I'm not sure what's happening as far as people trespassing on the property that is, as it is currently. But obviously, if any of the existing structures, which are, not currently being lived in, may potentially be an attractive nuisance for some of the things that, might be causing some of the trespassing that she's experiencing. So that we can easily resolve and take care of quickly. I was not anticipating securing the property with fencing, which that could be up for consideration by the council, because we had talked about just leaving it as an open space for now. We're not planning on developing on that property for at least 2 years to 3 years. The process that will take place to do the master planning and concepts, and then the financing mechanism to actually pay for any improvements that might happen on that facility are not anticipated to be available till 2023. So that gives a good amount of time for residents that are concerned to work with the village to come up with something that will likely be a passive type park based on my conversations with the elected officials, preliminary discussions. We don't anticipate having, because it's not a huge piece of property, we don't anticipate that there'll be, full, baseball fields or anything like that out there. So for what it's worth, and maybe to calm some of the concerns of a lot of activity, I don't foresee that that's going to be the case on the property, just because of the size of the property and what from sports amenities, you would need a lot more land than what's available there. So, but we definitely, once developed, that property will be secured with a fence, as are all our parks, and all our parks have operating hours that we adhere to strictly. And so we can also deal with any concerns of noise, through that mechanism, just making sure we shut down at certain times, and including programs and noise concerns. We obviously are neighbors to a lot of our facilities. We are surrounded with residential areas, so we very much are aware of the impact of these facilities on the quality of life of the neighbors. So we definitely want to make sure that the folks understand that we're sensitive to their quality of life, and are looking forward to working through the process with them.
Yeah, Rana, we'll make sure we keep you and your group in close touch the entire process as we move forward. And our emails are out there, and I can give you my cell phone number. We'll just make sure that we're all in communication so that you know what's going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's very good. Thanks for being here. Okay, does the council want to have a discussion? Well, Guido, is there anybody else in the waiting room to comment on this? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Anybody want to talk?
So in order to clarify a couple of things, overwhelmingly the feedback that I've gotten since we started discussing the process has been positive. I think we've been pretty clear about what criteria we were using, particularly the fact that based on Florida standards, the village is underparked. And that particular quadrant of the village is significantly more than a mile away from any existing park facility. And within a mile distance is considered the appropriate distance for a community to plan having parks. Based on the concerns that I've heard from two homeowners in the area, do we have any parks that are isolated from residential neighborhoods in the village? Can I ask the manager?
No, they are all surrounded by, or at least in part by residential areas.
So if a resident of the village of Pinecrest goes to a village of Pinecrest park and uses the park today, they are in a park that abuts somebody's house. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. In terms of safety, we have several park facilities, not just close to US 1, but actually on US 1. What has been our experience in terms of safety? Do we find them to be nodes of crime?
What we find, especially along the US 1 corridor in particular, those parks tend to have more instances of smash and grab type opportunity, thefts. But those come in spurts. But other than that, there are no higher incidents of crime. Homeless folks aren't, coming into our parks. The one park that on occasion will have homeless folks sit and spend some time in is the Veterans Wayside Park, which is closed at sundown. And then, the police would come in and ask them to leave the property. So clearly, all these properties have no trespass orders after hours when they're closed. Nobody can be in those properties. There's no activity in those properties. And they're definitely, we're sensitive to not allow any type of criminal activity on our properties.
I know that whatever happens in terms of charrettes and development, so to speak, of the property, is there any immediate plan to install lighting at the property?
No. There are no immediate plans to install lighting. The only immediate plans is to remove the structures that are on the property, and the property in essence will be vacant grass land.
Are there trees on the property?
There are trees on the property, so those would remain. But, it'll just be an empty lot.
And so our role until several years passes and we manage to do a master plan for it and then consider funding mechanisms.
Mow the lawn.
To mow the lawn and trim the trees, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
Mayor Cordier.
Shannon, did you have?
Just one quick thing. There's a typo in the title on a property description. It reads 6610. It reads 8810, and I think should be 6610, but that's minor. No, I think that maybe the manager's idea of removing any vacant structure may actually curtail any trespassing that the neighboring residents are experiencing right now. And I'm sure, just based on what I've seen from this council, that we will be mindful of the neighbors' concern moving forward on what we plan.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. First and foremost in our mind.
That's all I have.
Anybody?
I was wondering, she was talking about she viewed some homeless people, and I wonder if that was the same situation that Swan Lake brought to our attention with that bus stop there, that the county agreed to move the bench because there were people hanging out on that bench. I wonder if she even knows about that, because that was recent.
Knows now.
Yeah.
And the bus has been moved closer to US 1, so that attractive nuisance has been
Right.
closer to the corridor.
Right.
So I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, I would move to execute this, the purchase of this property. I will comment as I make this motion, that a consistent theme of communications that I'm getting from the community is they very much want to see the traditional Palermo family holiday greetings reinstated at the corner of Kendall and Ludlam. And I think we have a moral responsibility to address that community demand.
I second that. It seems to be a Pinecrest icon.
It definitely was, I think.
Correct. So yes, I would move to.
All right, we have a
purchase the
motion.
property
Anybody want a
and-
second?
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. Do we need a roll call or we just,
Councilmember
Call it.
Abbott,
question?
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Corradino.
Yes.
Motion carries. The resolution is adopted.
All right, great work, everybody. That was good for us.
Next
All right.
item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, urging the Florida Legislature to expand the qualifying improvements that may be financed through property assessed clean energy programs to include conversion from septic tanks to sewer systems and other sewage treatment improvements and connection of properties dependent on contaminated wells to potable water systems. Preliminarily identifying the issue as a state legislative priority for the 2021 session, providing for authorization, providing for transmittal, and an effective date. There is one resident signed up to speak on this item, Mr. Mayor.
Anna? You're
So I'm bringing this to council for consideration because I'm the village's representative on the PACE Green Energy Corridor financing program. And it's been around for a while. I've been serving on the board now for 2 years. As everyone knows, and we've discussed extensively, PACE financing is not for everyone. It's a unique financing option. But there are circumstances, I've concluded after some study, where PACE financing is likely the best option for a homeowner to do qualifying improvements. There has been some movement in the legislature this year. There are 2 bills, at least, that are moving through the Senate and the House, which do 2 things. The first thing they do is they simply require PACE districts to comply with certain financial clarity and customer service regulations, which are fantastic and we support, and our particular financing program already has instituted without the state mandate. The other thing it does is it expands the types of projects that can be funded with PACE financing. And in this particular case, what's interesting to us as a group is that the one of the versions, not both, but one of the versions would allow PACE financing to be used to connect and convert from septic tanks to sewer in the case that you had a failed sewer system. And one of the versions would allow you to use PACE financing to connect to a municipal or county water system if your well were to fail due to contaminants or saltwater intrusion. So while septic to sewer is a fantastic thing, and we want to support that as a region, and that's why the support for septic to sewer conversion using PACE funding is in here. The specific Pinecrest interest in this is the idea that in a worst case scenario where you had a well-dependent property with access to a Miami-Dade County water line, but you had a homeowner who did not have the funds readily available to actually connect and who suffered a catastrophic failure of their well system, they could conceivably use PACE financing to make the home habitable again and connect to potable water. And while it wouldn't likely be a particularly common funding mechanism, in many cases, I would think of it as a funding mechanism as last resort, given that we have several hundred homes in the village that are adjacent to water lines, but have not yet connected for many, many reasons. Being able to provide this safety net to those residents in a worst case scenario would be quite beneficial to the village. So this piggybacks language that was already passed by Cutler Bay in support of this legislation, although their language specifically supported septic to sewer because that's their particular interest. This supports septic to sewer and adds the potable water connection element to it.
That sounds pretty important and a good relief for the folks that may end up needing it as they need to convert one way or the other, at least for water in the near term and for the septic to sewer in the long term. Anybody else have a comment on this?
No, I mean, this resolution seems to benefit residents who might, it opens opportunities, right, for residents who might benefit from it. So I would support it.
In case anyone's listening who might not know what PACE is, can you, Anna, give a very quick description of the program?
Yeah. So PACE is a funding mechanism that allows people to use the equity in their home to finance certain clean energy and efficiency improvements. The traditional improvements here in South Florida have been impact windows, generators, new roofs, things that make your home more efficient and more resistant to hurricanes in particular. They are particularly popular in real estate markets like ours and in California, for example, where you have unusually high and growing property values, where you would have homeowners who have perhaps been in their home for many decades, whose cash flow might be relatively low compared to the amount of equity that they've accumulated over the past few decades in their home. And so they wouldn't necessarily be able to go out and get a second mortgage or get a home equity loan because they don't have the cash flow coming in to support that kind of investment. But under this financing option would then use the equity that they're living in their home just because property values have risen so enormously around them. And then the kicker on PACE funding, which makes it attractive to those people, is that the payoff then happens over 10 or 20 years, in some cases 15 years, on your property tax bill. So rather than having a separate payment each year when that trim notice comes and the property tax notice comes, you pay it to the property appraiser's office, who then disperses it to the PACE district. That means that the costs associated with PACE financing are higher than other sorts of financing. But at the same time, it gives flexibility to people who might have an unusual financial situation, which might exclude them from having the opportunity to make really necessary improvements to their home.
What's the interest rate range?
It's very complex. It generally runs anywhere from 2 points higher than what you would get on a home equity loan to like 4 points higher than what you would get on a home equity loan. Now you can even pay down. It's almost like you can pay points on a mortgage. You can pay down up front to lower the interest rate and to make that difference between a more traditional financing structure and a PACE financing program get smaller. They've eliminated some of the things that were considered a little bit unsavory about PACE programs when they were first started. For example, there used to be prepayment penalties. Those, for example, in our PACE district were eliminated several years ago. You can pay off your PACE loan at any time. So it's, as I say, it's slightly more, but it generally appeals to people who have a somewhat unorthodox financial situation.
Got it.
And who might have no access to financing at all.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
As a reminder, Mr. Mayor, you do have a speaker on the item.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's open the public hearing.
Mr. Anakis, you're on with the Village Council.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Daniel. Welcome.
How are you doing, guys?
Everybody's great here, it looks like.
I hope everybody's okay. This is kind of, we are going through challenging times. So Thank you, Farana, to actually explaining the details of PACE. I think it's, and I have a very, how I say, is a conflicting relationship with PACE, because I really understand what Anna actually brought up as that has to be a very unusual situation, even to take PACE into your consideration based on the current financing structure. I understand what Anna said is about 4% higher than the current mortgage rate. And, but because there are certain fees associated with it, is really can push it to the kind of a fully loaded APR around the 8 to 12% range, which in a 12-year or 15-year or 20-year time frame, I really, I don't think is actually as advisable for anybody to do so. So for me, that's I don't see it financially as a good decision to make. And that's the reason is, for example, I always advise not to take PACE, for example, on a solar installation, because in my opinion, you can have 7-8% return of investment if you do your solar from your own money, but the APR, fully do the APR and the PACE actually is higher. So I personally support this whole, because for those very, very kind of edge cases where the person actually fully backed out all of their mortgaging capabilities and they still need to connect the water when things happen. So I think that's a last resort solution. What I really would like to actually add to you guys to consider why we cannot create our PACE program for maybe for this scenario, but also from other actual renewable investment to our community. With much better financing, what we can actually achieve because of our village financial standing. And for me, it's about remanaging our PACE program, and we can use the framework what the legislation applies to us, but we manage for ourselves, because we can do much better financing what currently the PACE program provides. So I am just wanted to bring it up to that. Hey, if we're going to do additional things, not just this, maybe in a future, we just think about that, what is it realistic, what I'm actually recommending, how can be done to actually make it more efficient to the homeowners to actually take advantage of the PACE as which actually works in the same way like the special taxing district for individual homeowner level.
Thank you, Daniel. Guido, is there anybody else? Shannon?
No, sir.
Shannon, go ahead. There's nobody else.
I want to make sure I understand this. This resolution is to expand the qualifying improvements. It doesn't really compel a resident to avail themselves to PACE if they don't want to, right? It's just making it available should they want to.
Correct.
Mitch, you want to?
Go ahead, Mitch.
I believe that the effect of the resolution is to urge a legislative change. We don't have the authority, because the PACE is authorized by state statute. We don't have the authority to expand the allowable uses by ordinance without a legislative change. So all we're doing at this point is urging the Florida legislature to take action to expand the PACE program.
Right. So we are just saying that we would support expanding the qualifying.
So this is a resolution of support for a legislative action.
Correct.
And I assume
Okay.
we'll add that to our legislative priorities as well, so that to the extent that you have that you interact with the legislators or you go to Tallahassee, this would be one of the things you would be asking them to do.
And then
Katie, did you have something?
and
Yeah,
I
that's
just
kind of my question, because in section 3, it authorized our village manager to direct our state lobbyists, and I wasn't sure if we were opening that door again, or if that was just a placeholder till the future when we do.
it's boilerplate in case we ever have a lobbyist again. But what I will do is our PACE district has a statewide lobbyist named Kate Wesner. And so if this resolution passes in support of this, I'll send this on to her so that as she's lobbying for the district in Tallahassee, she has another city that's part of our district that's urging the expansion of qualifying improvements. Cutler Bay is also a municipality that's in our PACE district.
Mr. Mayor, we would just need to let her know to remind her to also register as a lobbyist for the village if she's going to be doing that in Tallahassee, just to make sure she can represent. It's just
I'm
paperwork.
sorry, register as a lobbyist.
They have to register, so then, and then I get a form through the state where I would sign off that she is allowed to lobby on our behalf on that particular topic.
Mitch, could you make sure that Chad gets that message? That if this passes, that Kate should make sure to do that. She just started lobbying for PACE this year, so that form might not have yet been filled out.
Well, she's lobbying for PACE, right?
Yes, she's the PACE. She's actually the Y Green's lobbyist. Y Green is our company that provides the PACE.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a motion.
I'll move.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. Guido?
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Corradino.
Yes.
Motion passes. The resolution is adopted. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, expressing opposition to the Florida Legislature's efforts to preempt the home rule powers of municipalities to regulate vacation rentals, providing for an effective date.
Okay, great. Oh, I think, Anna, I think you sent something out about this in one of your in one of your emails. And then I had a meeting with one of our senators the other day and who passed me the legislation. So I figured I would just put this on because it seemed like we had interest in it. Evidently, there are two bills running through the session this year. Both of them are really preempting our local home rule powers on vacation rentals. And what I think we probably want to do is oppose those measures and oppose the preemption. So that's what this resolution states. And pretty simple that they keep doing this, and it's probably a bad thing for the village. Who knows what could come of it if we can't retain the ability to code enforce and do our jobs in that sense. Does there anybody have any questions or comments?
I absolutely support the resolution.
I support it too. I was wondering, just to confirm, is this the same proposed bill as the preempting the home business regulation?
No, that's
No,
a
I think,
crazy
go
idea.
ahead, Anna.
Sorry, I was going to say that's a separate crazy idea.
Right. We'll probably have a next month. Should probably do something on that too.
Yeah, I was gonna go there next. Okay.
Yeah, we can do it. I mean, I guess we ought to just urge them not to pass the whole session, perhaps, as it deals with cities, but it doesn't usually have a positive impact on us. All right. So, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move. Shannon's
Who
got
did?
it.
Anna and second
Got it.
Shannon. All right, Guido.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Corradino.
Yes. All right.
Motion carries. The resolution is adopted.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the line, folks. We have a workshop on Thursday, March 11th. That's in 2 mornings, 9 a.m. And that will be virtual, right? We don't have to meet in person for that.
Correct. You can join the meeting from a remote location. Mr. Mayor, we did have one more item.
Oh,
I
yeah.
circulated to the council this afternoon. It's a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Village of Pinecrest, providing for an effective date. As many of you know, this Friday, March 12th, will be the 25th anniversary of the Village of Pinecrest, which is really incredible to think about that. And obviously, because of the pandemic, we're very limited in terms of a communal celebration. But if you've been following along on social media for the last several weeks, if you've seen the special edition of the Pinecrest Tribune, if you've seen some other things we've been doing to sort of commemorate the moment, it's a big milestone for our organization. And so this resolution just acknowledges that milestone.
Yeah, that's great. And it is kind of amazing. We're probably one of the only cities that retains its first 2 employees from 25 years ago, basically. That provides us great institutional knowledge. So that's helpful. If that, I don't know if we would have known, couldn't have been able to write this resolution if you weren't around. We would have forgotten.
As several of you have had some very kind words about the publication that I worked on with the Pinecrest Tribune, and as I told several of you, I hope that publication and some of the stuff we've done on social media just serves as a good historical resource, because I don't think I'll be here for Pinecrest 50. So hopefully a lot of this stuff will leave a good foundation for the efforts of people like Evelyn Greer and Gary Matzner, who without their untiring, I mean, you read Evelyn Greer's column about the fight for incorporation, and it's really incredible what they were able to accomplish, rising over obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And if you ask Evelyn what her greatest sense of accomplishment has been, she won't tell you that it was the police department or creating a city or village government or anything, or even having a park named after her. She'll tell you that her biggest sense of pride and accomplishment is that the founders created a community. Before the village was incorporated, Pinecrest was just part of the greater Kendall area, had no sense of identity, no sense of community. And today people not only know where Pinecrest is, identify it, have a great quality of life because of the village and because of all of the great accomplishments. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's great. Couldn't be said better. We thank them all for what they did. Obviously, it's not easy to do these jobs, and it couldn't have been easy when they just started it up, right? Going through the incorporation efforts and then trying to form a government and do what they had to do in the early days. So we got it easy. We're down the sidewalks and peacocks. They had it pretty difficult.
One more anecdote, if I may, Mr. Mayor, now that you said that they didn't have it easy. If you ask former council member Barry Blacksburg, he'll tell you about the humbling experience. The first time he was elected to office was to the village council. And the first several meetings the council had were in the library at Pinecrest Elementary. And for several of those meetings, due to lack of coordination, if you will, they ended up sitting on chairs that were designed for first graders. Mm-hmm. And so I think from day one, that instilled in that council and in every subsequent council a sense of humility, a sense of true public service, that this, unlike a lot of the cities that elected officials get paid and have all kinds of benefits and, people drive them around places, you all do this purely for the public service. And so I think that is in big part, the manager I know will agree with me, that is in big part what has made Pinecrest so successful and avoided a lot of the political pitfalls that we see in a lot of the other communities.
Yeah, if we could carry that attitude forward, it would be, as long as we can, we would do everybody a service. Yossi, you got anything to say? You were here.
Yeah, I was just recalling, funny that Guido was talking about some of the stuff, because I do remember sitting with and doing, we were actually clerking before we were ever hired in Pinecrest. We were both working in Key Biscayne and taking turns clerking those initial meetings. And so there's some funny pictures of us, and I just can't believe 25 years have gone by, because it's like it's a world, like it just passes so quickly. And so it is a little shocking, and hopefully I still will be here in 25 years from now, because I have 2 toddlers. Guido's like long gone, but I got a ways to go. But it is, I've always said it is an honor of my lifetime to give service to this community. And so it is incredible to think, and I'm so thankful that we've had the opportunity to be in this adventure. I was the third employee officially hired by the village. So Guido was the first, Peter Lombardi was the second, and then I was the third. So we literally sat in one office, all three of us working very closely for hours and hours, weekends. It was just incredible setting it up. It's definitely all worth the effort to see what we've grown up to be and what we have yet to accomplish as an organization. It's something, an honor for me, for sure.
Great. Thank you guys for doing what you've done whole way. It's inspirational, and it makes this job much more easy than it would be otherwise, because you've got all the institutional knowledge in the world. So Guido, you're going to let the previous council members and elected officials know we've done this. It's kind of in a vacuum. I'm sure they're not watching tonight. So let them know we've passed the resolution, and thank them for everything that they've done. Get us where we are.
Yes, sir. I circulated it this afternoon as well. The council roster of every council for the last 25 years, we will attach that to the resolution. I will circulate it. I have been sharing, certainly with the founding council, some of the things we've been doing to commemorate the 25th anniversary, so that they've been kind of in the loop. Again, unfortunately, we can't have a communal celebration. I did promise Mayor Greer that when we're able to, hopefully sometime this summer, the village will host some kind of luncheon and invite them all, so that we can at least share the milestone together. And after you vote on the resolution and you adjourn the meeting, no pressure, everyone can go, but I'll lead us off the broadcast tonight with a slideshow of pictures that we actually prepared for the 20th anniversary. So anybody that wants to stick around and watch, you can. No one feel obligated to do so.
That'll be fun. All right, let's do it. Does anybody have anything on this? Anything else? All right, we got a motion.
I'll move.
Shannon's got it. Anybody want a second, Katie?
Sure.
All right, motion in a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion passed. Okay, just before we close up, we've got the workshop on the 11th, 9 a.m., and that's about our land development regulations. So if anybody's interested in that, please tune in so we can have a discussion about that. And once we get them straight, we'll bring them to the village council for at least 2 readings to make sure that we get them incorporated. So with that, anybody want to adjourn? Shannon?
Oh, it's
You're up.
me?
Yeah.
I'm carrying the tradition. I'm
carrying the tradition. All right, we're meeting's adjourned, and Guido's going to show the slideshow. Oh, look at that.
Oh, wow.
Do we miss not having the village council polos? Or are we happy that that one went by the wayside?
I think I have some, right?
I'm sure you've got a closet full of them.
Those were a wonderful tradition that helped to build camaraderie and teamwork. And
Yes.
just the other day, Councilmember Bob Hingston asked me if I had any lying around that he'd love to have another one. So some people loved them.
I'm sure some people do.
Did you have any in his size? That's a pretty big shirt.
We found one, yes, sir. I'm always happy to accommodate our former council members, especially when it's such a simple request. There's, I guess, we should note, there's a picture of Jeff Cutler at the unveiling of the Tree City sign. Unfortunately, 3 former council members are no longer with us. So we obviously take a moment to remember Leslie Bowe, Jeff Cutler, and Gail Sirota. There's Gail there on the right, and Jeff on the left, and a young Joe Corradino.
A very young.
Yeah, look at that young guy.
That's Councilmember Harder. There's Councilmember Sirota.
Mm-hmm.
who's terribly, terribly missed. That is a potpourri of council members. There's former Mayor Gary Matzner, who's the second mayor of the village. There's the municipal center under construction. My favorite pet project over 25 years was getting that designation. Look at those two youngsters.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Parade director. I love it.
Yossi looks identical. She hasn't aged a day.
Look at those guys.
Ooh,
Aw.
Oh, that's great.
you still wear that sport coat, Joe?
Yeah.
That's evergreen.
I can't fit into it anymore, but I still wear it anyway.
Look at the mayor with dark hair. Now she's a blonde.
Oh my.
It happens to all of us.
Those were the old cars.
Yeah,
Instead
those were
of
the
green, they
old
were that
cars.
color.
There's the Shear family from
Right.
Oh,
Parrot Jungle founder.
Wow.
There's the original
Our vehicles.
design of our police
Loser,
car.
look at that.
My gosh.
I think there's one or two pines left.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's the last pine in Pinecrest.
We set a trend with the street signs after we did it. 5 or 6 other cities in the county did it. There's the original sign at Parrot Jungle. There's some more parade
Aw.
directing.
geez.
There's our original police force. Chief Davis is in the center. He was our first chief. That was raising the flags on the first day we received the 3 parks from the county. That was the dedication of Pinecrest Gardens in 2003.
Oh, that's
I forgot
Impressive.
that.
Councilmember Barry Blacksburg and his family.
Mhm.
That's my favorite picture of Councilmember Blank. There, of course, is Councilmember Leslie Bowe.
That's
Right.
a cool.
That was at the
There we go.
dedication of the community center in 2008. There's Tony, who's dutifully taken care of our flags for 20 some years.
Yeah.
There was the first transfer between the first and second mayor, Congresswoman Ross Layton at one of our veterans events, the dedication of the community center with the Pinecrest Elementary Chorus. That was at the groundbreaking of the municipal center.
Look at that logo.
Mhm.
There's a young Joe Cordino again.
Yeah, I almost didn't recognize him.
oh my God.
Were those our historic gold shovels?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. This was at Mayor Lerner's first State of the Village address.
Mhm.
Street lights.
I remember that, yeah.
That was at the dedication of the municipal center. Congresswoman gave us a flag flown over the Capitol.
Were you rewriting her speech?
That
Oh, that's the chief?
The
was the
swearing in
chief
for the-
swearing in. This was the signing of our sister city agreement with Cognac.
Mhm.
There's
I
the
remember that.
NBA championship trophy in Village Hall.
Ooh,
Is that Priscilla?
That was Priscilla in that picture, yeah.
A very tan mayor just passed.
That was Sergeant Willie Hill, who was a member of our original department.
Mhm.
You know, Councilmember Bob.
Oh, that's cute.
Hey, who's that guy?
hey, Doug,
Who's that young?
you haven't changed a bit.
He's got a new sport coat on, though.
He's got a different sport coat on.
Different sport coat, right? Might be old. Mayor Lerner.
Oh, look at that. That's a strike.
That's a great aerial picture.
Mhm.
How'd you get that? You actually have to have a helicopter or something at that time?
That obviously that's pre-drone. That goes back to
Mhm.
2001 when we dedicated the park. So that was actually that's when they used to have planes that would take aerial photographs.
No, no kidding.
Yeah, we purchased the whole set throughout the construction of the park itself. That was the redevelopment of Sunnyland Park.
Right.
Who is that gentleman?
That's
Bob
Bob
Kingston.
Kingston.
Oh,
Nancy Harder,
Nancy?
Jeff.
Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
I love the tie.
Oh, good. Hey, get that bird off there. Get a soil.
More cognac. At one point, they created a signature drink. Do you remember, Katie, for the
Yes.
Fashion in the Gardens with cognac and something else? It was spectacular. I have
It
no
was.
idea.
Was it really?
It was great. Can't remember what was in it, but I know it was cognac based.
Oh, look at that, how little he is.
anniversary.
We've been very fortunate over the years, had some great partnerships with the Miami Heat, with the Marlins, with the Dolphins. There's Senator Rennick with Yossi.
Oh,
That must be the Pioneers Luncheon?
Yes,
Probably.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. This was an Arbor Day planting. When the first people mover first rolled out, that was quite a graphic design. Our first electric vehicle in the fleet.
And that's Cynthia Everett, right? She was our original village attorney.
And she was
Well,
not the
Second.
first, but she was a longtime village
She was a
attorney.
long time village attorney, right?
Yeah, DJ Duty was our first,
Lynn Danheiser and her firm were the first, and then DJ Duty's firm was second, and then Cynthia came on and of course was the longtime attorney until she got the job in Fort Lauderdale. This is from the first meeting at Pinecrest Elementary
Wow.
School.
wow.
That's Franz Scheer, who founded Pinecrest Parrot Jungle.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Look at that.
That's from
I
last
remember
year.
that
I
place.
do too.
Ugh.
Back.
I remember when those agents were killed. That was scary.
Did you really?
Yeah.
It's in 85, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we had a ceremony with the FBI about 5 years ago to commemorate it.
Can I just ask, has anybody else ever been to the Serpentarium?
I have.
When I was a kid,
when I was
long
young.
time ago.
Yeah,
As a kid, yeah.
it was my,
Lots of field trips.
I loved it.
yeah, I did too.
I
That was so much fun.
was.
But just to think like that, you'd stand in a little circle around the guy and he would take out a king cobra and just there in the middle, like there was nothing blocking you. You were just standing in a circle around him. And he took it out to show you and let it crawl on the floor in front of you.
I'll bet you were allowed to ride your bike without a helmet too.
Yeah.
Oh man, we were
Well, we all
encouraged. to do that.
did. That's how you got to school.
Lots of sign unveilings over the years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a theme here. We're a sign people.
He has them all in his office.
Not all, because they don't fit.
He always makes an extra one.
There was Yossi's
Hey, there you go.
Yin, which hard to believe was 10 years ago this summer.
Was it really?
Yep.
Wow.
There's Casey in the sunshine, but well, not
Oh my.
Casey
You
and the
went to that
Pinecrest
concert?
people.
That was great.
There's Romero Brito at the unveiling of the sculpture. This is when we opened Flagler Grove Park. So some of the images are starting to repeat, but so that gives you a pretty good sense of, 25
Great
years.
job, Guido.
It's gone by fast, but it's been a lot of great accomplishments and a lot of good work.
Yeah, good job, Guido. That's fun.
We're lucky to have you.
Yep, thank you for your service.
That was fun.
That was.
All right.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. We're signing off. Thanks,